Evening, everyone. I'll call the City Council to order at 8 o'clock on Monday evening, May 9th, 2022. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We have 20 items on our agenda this evening, but we do have 5 public hearings. So we will go through each one of those after we get done, dispense with the minutes. So I will ask the city clerk to please read agenda item number 1.
Minutes of the City Council meeting, April 25th, 2022.
Councilor Navin.
Thank you, Mr. President. Motion to accept and place on file.
Motion's made and second to accept and place on file the minutes. Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? The minutes are filed 9-0. Agenda item number 2.
Now is the time for the public hearing on the petition from Massachusetts Electric and Verizon New England to install a new pole and remove the old pole and install underground cable for city work around the pump station on Cullinane Drive. Order number 22-100, 8586.
Okay, this public hearing will be taken up in 4 stages. First, with the public speaking in favor. Second, questions from the public. Third, public speaking in opposition. And finally, fourth, questions from the City Council. And we'll start with public speaking in favor, starting with the applicant. Is there anyone here from Mass Electric or National Grid? Anyone here from Mass Electric or National Grid? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to continue the public hearing until May 23rd.
So moved.
Motion made and seconded to continue the public hearing until May 23rd. All those in favor? Opposed? The public hearing is continued to May 23rd. Vote 9-0. Agenda item 3.
Now is the time for the public hearing on the proposed fiscal year 2023 budget as submitted by Mayor Vigent in the amount of $181,260,899, which represents a 4.18% increase over the fiscal year 2022 appropriation. Order number 22-100, 8584.
Again, this public hearing will be taken up in 4 stages. First, with the public speaking in favor. Second, with the questions from the public. Then third, public speaking in opposition. And finally, questions from the city councilors. Are there any members of the public speaking in favor of the fiscal year 23 budget? Any members of the public speaking in favor of the fiscal year 23 budget? Any members of the public speaking in favor of the fiscal year 23 budget? Hearing none, I close that portion of the public hearing. Any questions from the public? Any members of the public have questions on the fiscal year 23 budget? Are there any questions on the fiscal year 23 budget? Hearing none, I'll close that portion of the public hearing. Any members of the public speaking in opposition of the fiscal year 23 budget? Any members of the public speaking in opposition of the budget? Any members of the public speaking in opposition? Hearing none, I'll close that portion of the public hearing. Any questions from the City Council? Questions from the City Council? Any questions from the City Council? Hearing none, I close that portion of the public hearing and the entire public hearing. Agenda item number 4.
Now is the time for the public hearing on the application for a special permit and site plan approval from Celco Partnership, DBA Verizon Wireless, to install a new stealth wireless communication facility, including an 80-foot stealth pole with accessory ground equipment at 739 to 769 Donald J. Lynch Boulevard. Order number 22-100, 8570.
Again, we'll take this public hearing up in 4 stages. Public speaking in favor, questions from the public, public speaking in opposition, and questions from the council. I'll ask the applicant to come up to this podium. If any of the residents or members of the public have questions, they'll speak from the podium in the back. And I would ask that the applicant state their name and address for the record, and I'll turn it over to you, Chris.
Thank you, Mr. President. Carl Gehring on behalf of Verizon Wireless. I'm hoping that you all have your application binders in front of you, or if not, if you can remember them. I'm going to go through very quickly the contents, and I found by doing so I'll answer some of your questions in advance. The first thing I want to explain is that when you mention cell tower, there's a lot of hand-wringing oftentimes, and people are all concerned. This is very simple. It's just a pole. Basically, we just want to build a tall, sleek pole, hide our antennas inside, The site plan, planning and zoning type development aspects of this are very simple. It's less complicated than building a single-family home. There's less land disturbance than building a single-family home. We use no water or sewer. It's basically, we're proposing like the equivalent of like a Wi-Fi router for that neighborhood, basically. If you're a Verizon customer, service will be improved tremendously. So it's very simple, and what I want to do is just quickly go through the application. There's a lot of information in there, but under the first tab are what I call the municipal forms, the city forms. We're asking for a special permit, site plan approval. We've already been for our preliminary site plan approval. We have to go back for some more of that after you folks. Number 2, tab 2 is our statement of support, where I've gone through basically all of the requirements of your wireless ordinance. I'm not going to read this to you, but I went through line by line every single element of the application that's required or how it's not applicable or we're asking for a waiver. I've also got into direct special permit applications in addition to the wireless, and then I got into a little bit of alternate site analysis to kind of give you insight into how we locate sites and how we find them. I know you've had some of these so-called small cells in front of you over the last several months. This is a little bit different. This is what we call a macro site. A small cell is good when you have a specific problem, going around a certain corner of a road or a very high traffic area and so forth. This is a bigger problem we got going on here that is not going to be satisfied by just a couple of small cells. So this is what we call a macro site, but it's lower than your typical cell tower that you see back in the day. We're only proposing 80 feet here. It's a much more modest structure because that's what we need to get the job done, and I'll explain that when we get into the RF plots a little bit. Under number 3 is our letter of authorization from our landowner. Verizon basically has a leasehold interest in a small portion of the property. Basically 4 parking spaces off to the side of the building that houses EMS and DSW and so forth, and then we build our pole there and we're bringing underground utilities, so we're simply a tenant on the property with the right to access that little postage stamp area. Under number 4, I do this as a matter of course. Just on all my applications, I've included the field card tax map and deed for your familiarity of where that site's located. Under number 5 are the FCC licenses of Verizon. I put those in so that we have on the record that we're a federal licensee, and as such, we're afforded certain protections under federal law, so we're a little bit different than a typical applicant that comes in here. We also have additional burdens in the sense that we have to do a full NEPA report, full SHPO analysis, which is in process and being done by another consultant as we speak. So those run contemporaneous with what I'm doing here with you folks. But I put that in there also to show you there's 12 licenses. It's changed since, back in the day when it was analog cellular and everyone had one license. Verizon is basically like multiple carriers all in one. 12 FCC licenses going on here with, data, voice, all the different things we got going on. So this is a very important site for us. We want to make sure Marlborough stays connected and plugged in, and that's the FCC licenses to broadcast in this area. Under number 6 are the RF plots and the RF report. And one thing I thought is interesting under page 6 on that, this table 1, the engineer outlines all the surrounding sites this connects to, and if you average up the total height of all the sites, for towers only, it comes to about 112 feet. We're, as I said, much lower than your typical pole. We're only proposing 80. It's a more modern height, where the average of these surrounding ones is 112, and you can see some of them are much greater, 175 and so forth. So it's a modest height pole, and if you're a Verizon customer and you were down there today, you may have said, well, I made a call down there. What's the problem? The problem is, and this is kind of nuanced.
Carl, if you don't mind bringing the microphone with you, because the folks at home can't hear you. If the
Okay.
microphone doesn't move you. Thanks, Carl.
So this is sort of a nuanced photo. You've seen these other plots, and you have these small copies of these in all your binders. The other one sort of shows a before and after. This one I think is a much better picture. This is what's going on now, where here's the subject property. Coverage is actually coming in from this site over in Northborough. We call Northborough 2. That site was just designed to sort of cover this blob here, this site up here, this one. But the signal will continue on unimpeded. There's nothing to stop it or someone else to use it up. And there's this phenomenon in wireless called footprint shrinkage, where the more people that get on the line, the more the footprint shrinks down, because there's a finite amount of power that we're authorized to give off at a certain frequency. We have a radio station license just like any other radio station, except we're two-way radio. Regular conventional radio, you sit in your home and you tune in the signal. We're two-way radio, where we're tuning into your phone, your little device that you have and so forth. And there's a finite amount of power, so the more people that get on the line, the more it shrinks down and drops calls then on the periphery. So what's happening now is the signal to the subject area, which is a very densely populated in terms of commercial activity, people there shopping and so forth and on their phone and this and that. That's what uses up the bandwidth, and it's sucking it up where it's taking away from this Northborough 2 site. Here's what the result would be after this site is on air. Is this could then relax and go back to doing what it's supposed to be doing, and this blob here takes over for the new coverage. This is a really good thing, not just for this area, but for all the other areas that are trying to support this inadvertently now from quite a distance, as we're taking up bandwidth from other neighborhoods, other areas that could use the signal. They're being sucked up over here. When we build this site, those can all relax and go back to doing what they were designed. It's a much better system from the RF design perspective, so it's a very important site. And I explain that because it's a little nuance where if you went down there this afternoon and you said, well, I got a full signal, what do they need this for? Well, it depends on the network traffic. You won't have a full signal if it's a really high traffic time of the day. So that's the problem. And under number 7 is our report of our independent health physicist. Now, as the council may be aware, under federal law, it's off limits to have this discussion about health effects and so forth. And a lot of applicants will just cite to that and move on. And then people get suspicious, like, well, what are they hiding? What do you mean it's off limits? So I commissioned this independent health physicist to analyze the situation. Is this site compliant with federal guidelines, yes or no? And he concludes that not only is it compliant, but if you look on page 8 of his report, there are these 2 graphs, and the top one shows the coverage coming off the subject property, and this graph is 5.9%, say 6%, so it's under 6% of the health limits. And just to put that perspective in number, and again, I want to state I'm not waiving any of our rights or protections under federal law to not get into these discussions. I'm doing this simply as information and context, that all the experts and the scientists get around and figure out there's some level somewhere where RF is harmful, and they all agree on that. And say it's up here. They go 10 times below that and set the limit for workers in the industry, for OSHA, knowing that those folks know where to stand and how to behave around antennas. Then they go 5 times below that to set limits for members of the public. That's what we're measuring here, and we're at 6% of that. So basically, we're at 6% of 2%. It's like such a low number, it's a complete non-issue. So I submit that as evidence that not only are we compliant, but also to reassure anyone who might have questions about that it's compliant and safe. The graph below it, we don't normally include, but I asked the expert to do that because there's a building next door that we're building this right next to. And there could be a question, well, what if workers are up on the roof replacing the air conditioning or putting a new roof on or whatever? So we analyzed that, and on the roof, it's 11%. It's under 11, 10 point something. So basically, even if you're up on the roof hanging out and sunbathing, it's still way below the limits. It's like a complete non-issue. Under number 8, is our FAA report. Whenever you build a tall structure in the air, you have to get clearance from the FAA it's not going to obstruct air traffic control, or it may need a light or not. And this one came back completely clear. It's not obstructing any flight paths and does not need a light. The next one is our sound report, acoustical report. Now, these things don't give off sound per se. It's just a pole. But we'll have 2 sources, potential sources of sound. One of these little cabinets, which, back in the day, Verizon had these actual sheds that had big air conditioning units and all that. Now they're going with these little outdoor cabinets. And they do have a little fan in there that'll give off some noise, but that is negligible. You hardly hear that when you get a few feet away. But there will be an emergency standby generator, and the purpose of that is so if there's a blackout in the area, we can maintain service. We can click on and keep broadcasting, which is what you want if there's a storm or something. So the acoustical guy analyzes that against the property lines. And you can see on page 13 of his report, table 3, the facility sound, the one all the way at the far right, is so low, it's actually below the ambient in so many cases that you're not even going to notice that. You're not even going to hear that system, that facility operating over there. So noise is a complete non-issue. Under number 10, I commissioned a real estate appraiser to analyze the situation because sometimes folks have concerns. Will building this pole nearby have a deleterious impact on my property values, yes or no? This is less critical being a commercial area, but we wanted to ask the question and analyze it. And he analyzed it and said no. If you see right on his first page, the conclusion will have no measurable impact on surrounding property values. And then under number 11, we did some photo simulations. Now we flew 2 balloons. One, we did what we call our private balloon float on March 2nd. That was the first time we flew a balloon. And that one I always do whenever I build a new tower because I want to know what it's going to look like so I can write up my narrative properly so we can have photo simulations. So we did that unadvertised because we were just playing it by ear on the weather. Let's pick a good weather day. March 2nd, the engineer said, it looks like it's good, let's go out there. So we flew the balloon, that's what we based these photos on. Then we did another advertised float on May 4th. And that one, if you had an opportunity to see that last week, it was also a good float. But the pictures that came out, I thought were pretty decent in the sense that, you know, here's, and you all have these in your packet. Here's the balloon. All right, so there's the balloon, and there's the thing scanned in. Now I have, in the meantime, I took the liberty of making some oh, shoot, I just dropped those. Hold on a second. I took the liberty of coming up with some different color ideas, because folks said, well, I don't know if you like that white thing there. And so we can paint this any color you want, basically. And one for the record. And I'm going to go around, if it's okay, Mr. President. Could I?
Absolutely.
Oh, you want to do that? Yeah, okay, thank you. So basically what we did was colored in white, brown, blue, black. We'll paint it any color you guys want. We have found that they're typically either white, because traditionally back in the day they used to call these flagpoles, although that would be incorrect now. They are so fat, the antennas have gotten so big. And you may have seen some of these traveling around where you see like a skinny pole and it's been bumped out because the antennas are so much wider these days. It would be incorrect to call it a flagpole, but we can paint it white. But I think the brown disappears pretty well. It just sort of blends in, or it doesn't catch your eye. It doesn't catch your eye as much. So we'll suggest that, but we'll defer to whatever you folks want. And then under the last tab, everyone's got a half-size, full-out set of plans. I have a full size here. And it's basically very simple. Here's the DSW EMS building. Here's Best Buy. We're talking about going over on the side there. If you've ever parked over there, you know, there's some parking spaces. We're going to take up 4. And by the way, I wanted to point out, in case anyone had questions, this came up at site plan. But I always do this if we're going in a parking lot. There are 577 parking spaces in this whole complex, and 486 are required under your zoning ordinance for so much for retail, so much for restaurant, and so on and so forth. So that leaves 91 extra spaces, and we're going to take 4 of them. So the parking is a non-issue. But the site plan itself is very basic, just a little fenced-off area right here. We have the monopole, the equipment. There's some extra space in there for additional carriers that might want to come along. And then there's an elevation of what it might look like. And so it basically, it's a 23-foot, almost, let's call it 24 by 38-foot lease area, so around 900 square feet. And then the compound is 22 by 36, so about 900. It's very small as far as development goes. And it's just going to be off to the side over there in the parking lot, which we think will be unobtrusive. It won't interfere with any traffic, and we respectfully hope that you will pass this and allow us to proceed with this. If there's any questions, I'd love to hear them.
That concludes the presentation, Carl?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay, no, thank you, Carl. Any other members of the public speaking in favor? Any members of the public speaking in favor? Any members of the public speaking in favor? Hearing none, I will close that part of the public hearing. Any questions from the public? Yes, sir. Please step up to the microphone. Please state your name for the record.
Good evening. My name is Steve Peck. I live on Victoria Drive here in Marlborough. I do have 2 questions for the gentleman. He mentioned that there'll be a backup generator, but you did not mention what fuel will be used and if there'll be tanks for that fuel. And second, you talked about the color. If you are going to put a color coating on this pole, what kind of maintenance is that going to need, and then what kind of schedule will you have for that maintenance? Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Carl, would you like to answer?
Yes, Mr. President. So the fuel is diesel. It's going to be in a self-contained belly tank underneath the tank, a double wall for redundancy against leaks. Also will be monitored remotely at the switch, so we'll know what the contents is, if there's a leak situation or not. The color of the pole, my understanding is it's painted at the factory and baked on, but it can be whatever color you want. And as far as the maintenance and longevity of that, we'd be responsible for that. I can find out and have answers for the public service folks on exactly
If you would, that'd be
yeah.
good. That good, Steve? You're good? All set? Okay. Any other questions from the public? Any other questions from the public? Any other questions from the public? Hearing none, I'll close that portion of the public hearing. Any members of the public speaking in opposition? Members of the public speaking in opposition? Members of the public speaking in opposition? Hearing none, I'll close that portion of the public hearing. Questions from the city councilors? Any questions from the city councilors? Questions from the city councilors? Any questions from the city councilors? Hearing none, I close that part of the public hearing, the entire public hearing, and this item is in the Public Services Committee, and I believe the chair has you on for next Monday, May 16th.
Great, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much, Carl. We'll let Carl clean up, and then we'll move on to agenda item number 5.
Oh, no idea. Oh, no, no, I don't know. But, 16. Well, he was here.
Now is the time for the public hearing on the application for a special permit from attorney Brian Falk on behalf of Alta Marlborough LLC, Wood Partners, to build a mixed-use project in the neighborhood business district consisting of 10,074 square feet, of ground floor retail and commercial space, 276 dwelling units, in addition to an on-site parking garage with 448 spaces, to be located at the corner of Lincoln Street and Mechanic Street, order number 22-100, 8572.
Okay, again, this public hearing will be taken in 4 stages. We'll start with the public speaking in favor, starting with the applicant, then questions from the public, then the public speaking in opposition, and then finally questions from the city councilors. So with that, we'll start with the public speaking in favor, starting with the applicant, and again, please state your name and address for the record.
Thank you, President Ossing, councilors. For the record, Brian Falk from Myrick O'Connell, 100 Front Street in Worcester, representing the applicant Alta Marlborough LLC, which is an affiliate of Wood Partners. We are very excited to bring forward this application for a mixed-use project at the corner of Lincoln and Mechanic Street, at the head of the rail trail. Alta Marlborough has the potential to be a transformative project, revitalizing a prominent eyesore property and providing a great public benefit to make the rail trail more accessible to the entire city. We have a great project team for you. Wood Partners is a national multifamily developer with a significant experience in Massachusetts. The project would return this area of the city to a traditional residential and commercial mix, with retail units and pedestrian areas along Lincoln Street and Mechanic Street, and residential units on the upper floors. The retail areas are designed with the entire city in mind, not just the residents of the project. In addition, we're providing all required parking on site in a garage in the back. With 448 garage spaces for 276 residential units, the project will not strain parking in the neighborhood. The project will be 58% one-bedroom, 38% two-bedroom, and 4% three-bedroom. Because of increased property values, our fiscal impact analysis estimates that the project will have a net positive on city revenues of over $700,000 per year. The residential units will be 10% affordable. That will help the city maintain its status quo with respect to the Chapter 40B safe harbor. The project will have a green roof, which our design team will discuss later, and 10% of the garage spaces will have an EV charging station. In addition to these benefits to the city, we believe the project will help the city transform a community jewel, the Assabet River Rail Trail. The project will create 22 off-street parking spaces, landscaping, and a restroom facility at the start of the rail trail at Lincoln and Highland, which will be deeded to the city for public use. By replacing the older buildings right on the edge of the trail, the rail trail will have a beautiful starting point that's accessible to families and residents of all ages. I'm going to turn now to Jim Lambert, our managing director at Wood Partners, to talk a bit about the company and its vision for this project. After Jim, we'll have our design team talk to you about the site and the building design. Jim?
Thank you, Brian. Good evening, members of the council. For the record, my name is Jim Lambert, Managing Director for Wood Partners, here tonight on behalf of the applicant, Alta Marlborough LLC. Very excited to be here tonight to propose this project at the corner of Lincoln and Mechanic Street. As Brian stated, this is a very underutilized parcel historically, and we are proposing a mixed-use project tonight that we think can revitalize not only this parcel, but also help push forward the downtown. So we're excited about that. A little bit about Wood Partners. Brian touched on it. We're one of the larger multifamily developers in the country. We've been operating here in Massachusetts, most importantly to you, since 2008. And in that time, we have built over 3,300 units of housing in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. That represents 14 completed projects, and we have 3 more projects currently under construction right now. One in Wayland, one in Worcester that is just getting started, and one in Somerville, which is finishing up. We are focused solely on rental housing. We are not office developers, we're not condominium developers, and we're not lab developers. We are apartment developers. It is what we do every day, in and out. We are experienced in it throughout the country and here locally, and it is our expertise. One thing I'd like to touch on that I think it should be important to this council and to the community is that we're not only a developer, we're also a general contractor and a property management firm. And that's important, I think, because we're one point of contact for the project all the way from start to finish. So it starts and ends with us. And I think that accountability factor is something that's unique for us and something that is a value add to the community. Again, just to touch on the site itself, you all know as well or better than I do, there's a long history here of stops and starts and potential ideas for development. It was a very difficult project to have put together. It is numerous parcels. It is 3 landowners and 1 tenant that we had to negotiate with to put this assemblage together. Very challenging in this environment, but we were able to pull that together, and we're really excited about that. There's a great need for housing both here in Marlborough and Metro West and in the Commonwealth in general, as many of you know. So putting housing in a mixed-use environment, walkable to the downtown, with all the amenities that the downtown has to offer, we feel is an appropriate and a really good location for this development, and we're excited to propose it here tonight. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to the design team, who's going to walk through our proposal in more detail. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you. Good evening. For the record, Phil Cordero from Allen and Major Associates, civil site engineers working on the project. Thank you, Mr. President, members of the council. We're happy to present the project to you this evening. The slide over my left shoulder gives you Locust, to which I'm sure most of you are familiar with the property. Lincoln Street on the lower portion of the screen, Mechanic Street, and of course the river trail that runs north to south on the page. Along the right side, consolidation of many parcels. The former gas station site, the former train depot and roundhouse, currently underutilized. This will be consolidated into one singular parcel, including a portion of the old rail lines that exist on the property. This is an aerial view of the same. There we go. And this gives you a proposed rendering view of what we're suggesting for this property. The large structure adjacent to Lincoln and Mechanic Street is our residential building with the 276 units, 4 stories on one portion, 5 on the other. It'll be located adjacent to both Lincoln and Mechanic Street with retail on the first floor, as Mr. Lambert and Mr. Falk have identified. The rear gray box to the rear is the parking garage, which will be for the residential use, which will provide more than adequate parking for the proposed residents of this without encumbering any of the street parking along this area of the city. However, because we have the retail located on the first floor, we are also providing some city parking spaces on both Lincoln and Mechanic Street. And as Mr. Falk pointed out, we do have a parking field adjacent to the head of the Assabet River Trail, which will be deeded to the city with an additional 22 parking spaces and a bathroom facility. One of the items that we're quite excited to bring to the city here, and we've been discussing it with your conservation and engineering team, is a live roof, a green roof, which is a low-impact development technique to introduce green vegetation to help handle drainage, which is a critical core component as part of these urban renewal projects. So we're very excited to work with your city staff members to really get in and discuss the merits of such an invigoration on the parcel and reuse of this parcel here. And we'll work with the rest of your city staff and members as we go through the process. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Michael Tuolapani from the Wood Partners team to discuss the building elements of the project.
Thank you, Phil. Again, my name is Mike Tulipani with Wood Partners. As everybody mentioned, this is a completely underutilized site currently that we are about to activate and become very, very lively. This is a view of the proposed project taken from Mechanic Street, which is where the cars are there, and Lincoln Street is going then in that direction. We are proposing a very activated ground level in terms of retail, amenity space, and we are breaking the massing down into smaller blocks. This is a relatively large block. It's about 600 feet wide. And we are proposing 3 core elements, the brick elements you see at the corners, the 2 corners, left and right, and then the main entry to the building, which is the other brick portion in the middle. In between those are the residential smaller blocks that are broken up into residential components with the bays in white and smaller windows and accents to bring down the scale. As Phil had mentioned, this is a combination of 2 buildings, a 5-story building and a 4-story building. One thing I want to note is that on the far right corner near the proposed restrooms, the site increases in slope to this corner on Mechanic Street by 10 feet. So when we're saying that this is a 5-story building, part of the lower floor on that side is tucked underground here. So it's 5 stories from the courtyard side. If you look at the floor plan, can you go back one, Brian? So it will appear as 4 stories here, but if you're in the courtyard here, it's 5 stories. So all the windows face the courtyard, but it's below grade here, and I can walk you through that on the actual floor plan in a couple slides of how that works. And a similar story with the garage. If you can go back one more right. When you enter the garage from Mechanic Street, you enter through this parking lot here. You actually enter into the 2nd level of the garage. The 1st level of the garage is completely below grade. And there are 3 stories of the garage along Mechanic Street. And the top of the garage...
Mr. President, point of order. For the home listening audience, I know you mentioned it to the previous, I'm sorry to interrupt you.
That's okay.
Bring your mic with you. They can't hear you in the home. People watching this on TV can't hear you when you walk over there. Thank you. Didn't mean to interrupt, but thank you.
No, that's fine. I will... The top floor of the garage is very small. It's only this portion right here. This ramp comes up. So it starts from 3 stories and goes to 4 stories above grade at the backside, even though the garage is 5 stories because of the lower level. On the next slide, Brad. The first floor of all of Mechanic Street and Lincoln Street is retail and active space. We have carefully planned along the streetscape for active retail use. You can see there's room for people to sit outside, cafes to come outside. This is all active space here. The main lobby, can you go to the next? The main lobby to the building is right in the center here, and again, there's a lot of pavement, and this is the corner by the rail trail where we're hoping to have a cafe with outdoor seating, so the use will flow onto the sidewalk to make it a very destination spot for everyone. This is a view just beyond the rail trail looking at the building. This is the space, the cafe space we just looked at in the previous slide, and the restroom building would be right here at the corner. And then this is a little bit further down where you can catch the edge of the garage on the right side and the rest of the residential building, and then the cafe corner. I'll go through this very quickly. The blue, this is the lower level of the plan. The blue is the retail space. The yellow, this is the main entry to the residential. This is all amenity space, which is going to have, all of this is double height windows. And this is the part that's underground from the street. So this is buried from the street. And if you go to the next slide, you'll see the retail in blue here at this corner. And we have a co-work space. Again, we're just trying to activate all of the public sides of the building. And that's, yep. So this top elevation here is Lincoln Street. This is you can see the 3 brick elements that anchor the corner and highlight the entry. And you can also see from that corner to this corner how the site slopes up. So there is one area of the building that doesn't have windows here. The windows are on the second floor. So what we've done in site plan here is created 3 little pocket parks with benches and paved areas where people can hang out, they can grab coffee, sit there right off of the sidewalk. You're not sitting on the sidewalk, but it's slightly, a little space right next to it. So we think that will help activate the street as well. And this is the view from the rail trail. And then a couple sections through the building where you can see the top, the blue is the retail, the double height space, with the tan color is the residential use. This is a section cut through so you can see the 2 courtyards, I'm sorry. So you can see the 5 stories here inside the courtyard, but 4 on this side. And then this building is 4 stories over here. And then there's the section through the garage that shows the lower level of, that's right. So this is where you enter the garage, and you can see you come down a ramp to a lower level, and then 2 levels of the garage are exposed here on Mechanic Street. And then as you go further up, this is below grade. And that completes that design. Thank you.
I'm just going to turn to my colleague Arthur Bergeron to talk to us a little bit about the history of the site.
Just briefly, Mr. President and members of the City Council, it's been a long time since I've been here, and so I appreciate it's wonderful to be back. Brian was supposed to put me on first so I could go home and go to bed. I'm an old guy now, you know. But I, you know, he gave me the slot that I do what he says. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about a couple of things. Obviously, I'm with the firm that is representing this group. I also have a personal stake. I can see this site from my house. And I walk by this site, and my wife walks by this site every day. Every day, we usually see Councilor Roby at some point later along the rail trail. So the notion, and every day you look and you say, God, this is terrible. When will this ever get developed? And the notion of this being kind of transformative to the rail trail and illustrating, as far as the rail trail is concerned, the way that the rail trail itself can really anchor some things. It makes you rethink all of the buildings that are down along the rail trail. But also the way that this changes the way that you think about the Lincoln Street corridor, that you folks were visionary enough to rezone so that that could really develop. And I think we always kind of wondered, how will the Lincoln Street corridor happen? But through this project, it may have the ability to happen starting there, starting at the rail trail, which is probably the right way, and kind of moving up Lincoln Street. So, but I am here for a couple of historical context that I think has a moral to it. First of all, can you raise your hand, anybody who actually ever saw the train station, the depot, the train station? Wow, you're that old. That's great. So
It was a gas station, but it was the same.
It was Old Man Brigham's gas station. So I am so old, I actually met Old Man Brigham when I was a kid. Old Man Brigham at this point would be about 130, right? And I met him as as a little kid. So I remember that, and I remember it was shortly after I was sitting in that Ward 4 seat as a city councilor, and right about the time that David Gabois and I bought our building, that Neil Facile demolished the train station. And I remember that. I remember the Jennifer Valianti, who chained herself to one of the gas pumps to try to keep the bulldozer away. It was very 60s, you know. So, but I remember. So that was like 40 years ago. That was 40 years ago when Facile bought it, and I've seen plans that Facile had to do things, but never really. And I could tell that because during the course of that time, I remember having meetings here. I remember 20 years ago, there were some friends and I had set up something called the Marlborough Community Development Corporation, because we idealistically thought that we'd create this nonprofit that would, take care of some development, like encourage some development. And so we got Bill Morrow involved, the mayor at that time, and I remember we had a meeting with Neil Facile in this building. And we were kind of talking about, what are the possibilities for this site? But it was always, well, have you got the other parcels all set? Because when you got them all set, then come and talk to me, right? And in the course of that 20 years ago, I also met Mr. Johnson Claflin. I met Mr. Johnson. Mr. Johnson lived on the Cape, and Bill Morrow and the city planner then, Al Lima, and I, and somebody else, I can't remember, drove to the Cape to go meet Mr. Johnson to see if we could get Mr. Johnson to agree to give the Community Development Corporation an option so that we'd have at a price, fix a price so that we'd be able to go talk to the other folks. Oh, no. You guys get those other ones set up and then come and talk to me, right? And of course, I also know Ben Donnarumma. Ben Donnarumma is the person that owns the little lot at the, and because I've represented Ben Donnarumma. I'm so old, I've represented a lot of people. And I remember, well, suffice it to say that all three of these players had exactly the same attitude that I've heard from owners for 45 years, because I've done a lot of real estate projects with a lot of development and a lot of people trying to combine parcels, and everybody wants to be the last guy to sell so that they can jack up their price, right? This is the market, right? And it is as a result of that nothing happened for 40 years. And the only reason why something is happening right now is Neil Facile died. And so the estate was selling the property, A, and B, you folks and the mayor decided to step up to the plate and buy one of the parcels. So that now finally, one of the three owners actually had the interests of the city in mind, and not just their own little stake in mind. Now, even at that, how long ago was that? That was 5 years ago. 5 years ago, and here we are, and finally there's a project, which personally I like, but I guess I would just, and it's a project, it's an interesting project on paper, but also it's got real horsepower behind it. You've seen wonderful projects. I've represented folks here who've presented wonderful projects, but they didn't get built because they were like kind of local folks trying to develop. This is the big time. There's a big time developer who's proposing something that can be truly transformative. And I guess the only reason why I mention that is the reason why the history is important, the 40 years of history. As you're going through this project and you're thinking to yourself, no, I don't know about this project. Couldn't we do something better than this? Instead of comparing this project to the thing that you think might be better, it's important to compare it to what's there. Because if this doesn't go, what's there is staying. I don't know if I'll see it in my lifetime. Of course, that's not saying much. I'm getting pretty old. But this is the chance to really do something, and I think it's a wonderful chance. So thank you very much. And I apologize for being long-winded. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you, Arthur. Just to wrap things up, I mentioned previously our fiscal impact analysis by Fougere Planning. We also submitted a transportation impact assessment by Vanessa & Associates. The report has some recommended conditions, which we would incorporate as part of our special permit decision. We also submitted a self-assessment of the project based upon the city's multifamily development review criteria. We look forward to working with the council, the Urban Affairs Committee, and the Site Plan Committee to review those submissions. In terms of our review process, we are obviously seeking this special permit. We're also seeking a zoning amendment that would give the council authority to modify dimensional controls for mixed-use projects in the neighborhood business district. That's the next hearing tonight. We're also supporting the proposed neighborhood business zoning map amendment, which would impact a small portion of the development site. This project will be subject to traditional site plan approval by the Site Plan Committee. We've already met with that committee informally on April 26th, and we look forward to the committee's comments and recommended conditions. Finally, I just wanted to mention that we're conducting a balloon test at the site next week on Wednesday, May 18th at 5 p.m. Our engineers will place balloons at the proposed building corners to demonstrate the height of the building. We mailed notice to abutters of the balloon test, and it's posted on the city website. We also mailed letters to abutters to introduce ourselves and the project and to provide contact information for the team. With that, I thank you for your time, and we look forward to addressing your questions. Thanks.
Thank you, Attorney Falk. Thank you, members of your team. Any other members of the public speaking in favor? Please come up to the podium and state your name.
I'll introduce myself again. My name is Steve Peck. I live in Marlborough on Victoria Drive. and this is one of the most beautiful projects I have seen in Marlborough in quite a long time, and I encourage our city council to do what is ever necessary to have this project move along.
Thank you, Mr. Peck. Anyone else speaking in favor? Stas, this gentleman, then you're up, Stas. Name and address, please.
For the record, my name is Jared Saad, representing Canty Brothers Construction, business facing directly across the street from the proposed project. When we received a letter from Jim Lambert and the Wood Partners introducing the potential Alta project directly across the street from us, which we are located at 322 Lincoln Street, we felt compelled to write a letter of support for this exciting upcoming project. Canty Brothers Construction has celebrated over 30 years in business, 13 of those at Lincoln Street, and has watched the corner of Lincoln and Mechanic Street as it continued through its ups and downs through the evolutions. With Canty Brothers Construction calling this area of Marlborough home, it is easy to see how we have been an advocate for the area and excited to see some of the latest positive changes, the roadworks project, and so on. We have been able to directly witness the impact of a new project can have in our area. In our most sincere of opinion, the potential project at Alta would be the most positive and beneficial project to come to Marlborough since the Apex Center project. Furthermore, in an argument worth noting, the lack of or absence of such a project like Alta getting pulled would enable a void for this specific area that could quickly fall into a purpose which no one would benefit from and potentially affect all those surrounding in a negative manner. In our opinion, the Alta project will greatly benefit the residents of the neighborhood, businesses in the area, and add value to the entire city of Marlborough. As a front-facing business directly across the street, we wanted to go on record with a letter of support for this Alta Marlborough project.
Thank you, Mr. Saad. We do have your letter, and it is part of the record, so thank you very much.
Excellent. Thanks again.
Appreciate that. Anyone else speaking in favor? Last.
My name is Stas Bourdain. You probably know me. Will be soon at 27 Jefferson Street, project under construction there. So I just, I apologize in advance because I will be a little bit long-winded here, but I just wanted to say a few things. So I have a history with this property as well. I was looking at that property myself. I know the owners. I was trying to purchase it and do something with it. And after trying and trying and trying, I've realized how difficult it really is. And then a few things happened here and there, and then the city bought the lot, and the price went up. And in these years, I've realized a few things. First of all, how difficult it would have been to do business with these people who own the properties as a part of this parcel, as I've known them for longer times now, and I pretty much realized it would be impossible for me to do it. And secondly, how much money it would actually take to do something real nice. And honestly, the way that this building looks reminds me a lot of the photographs that I've seen by the MEDC when they thought about creating this overlay district. So it's almost like the vision came true. So in my opinion, as a developer, I'm really excited. And not only that, I'm going to live at 27 Jefferson Street and be part of it. I use rail trail a lot, all the time pretty much. I drive Lincoln Street I live on one side of Lincoln, I drive to 27 Jefferson right now. I drive through the site every day, back and forth, every day. I walk, I run there, so I know this really well. And I'm really excited about the design. I think the design looks really nice from many angles, but I do have some particular suggestions about the improvement of the design, and I'm not sure, I might mention them briefly now because I'm not sure if I will be able to participate in the further meetings, but overall, I think conceptually this is a win, I think, for the city. I think the downtown had proven to be difficult to build because of the sizes of the projects, and this project is sizable enough that a reputable developer came in here. I've done some checking on them. I went to Framingham to look at their use case property, and I talked to some people there. I went into the building, I looked inside of the building, and went around the building, and I like it. As a developer, I like their approach in many ways. I like the design, I like how they break up the building. I really like the idea that they put the garage at the Mechanic Street to close all that view that's so undesirable. And I just really like it in many ways, and I think it would bring a lot of vibrance into the right area. The downtown, all these people will use services in downtown, all of them, right? All of these people will use the rail trail. The rail trail, in my opinion, is the artery that connects Marlborough to Hudson, and it's really important, extremely important. And overall, I think I wouldn't really mention number of units, traffic, all of that. I think I'll leave it up to the site, to people to figure it out, to technical people to figure out. And for the record, I've been against the project at this site before. What I've seen before was just horrible. And what this is, in my opinion, is a really beautiful project, well thought out, with a team of people who can actually deliver, which is really important, who were able to put these parcels together. And I think I'm really excited to have them as a neighbor, to have this in the neighborhood. And then to mention just a few things, just briefly. I'm sorry that I take so much time, but there are a couple of things that I want to mention, right? That I've looked at their plans from different sources, and I looked at the site plan, I looked at other things. So number one suggestion I would do is, I'm really excited to have that 22 parking spaces by the rail trail and the toilet, except, please, can you move that toilet from that corner? So if you drive, I suggest you drive from Lincoln Street from the east side down. It's a hillside. When you're on that hill, you have a direct view of the property. That corner would be beautiful. It would look beautiful, except the toilet will be right in front of it. So I think that if you move the toilet a little bit up the 22 parking lot, or maybe at the very end, I know there may be issues with water line, length of the water line, or maybe sidewalks, et cetera, but I think overall, you would actually, your tenant, your future cafe tenant, would really appreciate that if you do this. Because they don't really want to have toilet in front of their really nice cafe, that everybody can use. So that's item number one. Item number two, your main entrance on Lincoln Street. Your Lincoln Street side facade is 600 feet. It's really, really long. You broke it up well, I agree with that, but I still think there's an opportunity to break it up even a little bit more. My advice or suggestion would be, at that entrance point, you have some interesting tenants on the first floor. There's a gym facility in the building on the left, and then there is something else, a foyer, front of foyer on the right-hand side. So if you do a jog there, maybe 10 feet, 12 feet, whatever, like lose one bay of windows and do a jog into the building and put some real nice landscaping. So it will look like two buildings really separated. And it may make this really long wall of 600 feet broken up a little bit. So just that thing. One more item is the rail trail. If you go to the view of the rail trail, so the way you broke up things in this first view look really nice. But in the rail trail view, another one, please. There's another one. There's a view, perhaps this, yeah. So if you could use different maybe color or different exposure of the siding in here to make it visually different, right? You don't have to use expensive brick, but just do different siding, do different exposure, different color. It will be broken up a little bit better and look better from the rail trail. Rail trail is extremely important, I think, for your pedestrian view. That's where your potential tenants are coming from. That, and then I had some other technical questions, but I'm not going to ask them right now. I think overall, really good job. I'm for it. So thank you.
Thank you, Stas. Any other members of the public speaking in favor? Are there any other members of the public speaking in favor? Any members of the public speaking in favor? Hearing none, I will close that portion of the public hearing. Are there any questions from the public? Questions from the public? Well, hang on, Steve. One behind you, then you're up, Steve.
Okay. Hi, my name is Joyce Stewart. I live at 152 Bigelow. I have a property at 90 Prospect Street. And I had a couple of questions for you guys because my concern would be traffic and spaces. My property on Prospect Street, that street right now is very tight. I don't know if anybody ever drives up and down that street, but there's a lot of parking on that street, especially on the weekends. I was doing the math on your spaces, and I'm not a mathematician, I'm just a private landlord here. And I saw that you have 276 spaces, or apartments. The average family has 2 adults, they have 2 cars. So I added that up to be 552, would be the, times 2 would be the spaces needed for, 2 adults in an apartment, right? So from what I'm seeing here, there would be a shortfall of about 104 spaces for the rentals, because in my own experience, very small, 1 building, 3 apartments, most people have 2 cars. So that was one concern, so I don't know if you'd want to add another level to cover that. The other thing I noticed is that looks really nice, and I don't get me wrong, I think the property looks really nice, and I think it'll be a real advantage for Marlborough. Are you going to widen the road? Because that looks a lot wider than what Mechanic Street is now, and the street's kind of broken up, and, both Mechanic and Lincoln Street. The roads are terrible. I drive it all the time to go over to my property, and I follow Mechanic over to Lincoln to get there, and it's not that great. So if you're going to widen it, I think that's beautiful, and I think that'll really, add a benefit. If you're going to widen Lincoln, that would probably help there too. So that would be my other question. Then my last question was about, and the other gentleman had said about the restrooms. Who is going to maintain the restrooms? Because if any other cities, public restrooms, they can go downhill real fast. It's going to be a beautiful area. I'd really like to know. I only live 1 street over, so with my property is 1 street over. So it's been a nice residential area, and I know this is, a nice and new aspect for Marlborough, but I would really like to, understand what you might be able to do in regard to these questions.
Okay, thank you. Just, Brian, you want to take a shot at all 3 of those?
Happy to, Mr. President. With respect to parking spaces, the last thing we want is to not have enough parking spaces for our tenants. 2 cars per unit would not necessarily be the case here, because as I mentioned, 58% of our units are 1-bedroom, which are almost always single occupancy, and 38% are 2-bedroom, which are often double occupancy, but not necessarily, as there's a huge demand for home offices these days. So the majority of our units are likely to have 1 car. We're comfortable that our parking program is sufficient for the site based on our experience with many other multifamily projects. With respect to widening the road, we don't have a proposal to widen the public way. It may appear that way because one of the things that we're doing is the parallel parking that you see, half of it is actually on our property. Portions on city property within the public way, and half of it is actually on our site. So it may have the view of being widened, and we are providing public parking along the roadway, but a portion of it is on our site. So sort of yes and no in terms of widening the road. Your question about restroom maintenance, the parcel that we're proposing to deed to the city would be city property. It would be a city parking lot, and it would be city restrooms. So it's our expectation that it would be a city-maintained facility.
Okay, so my other question about the 1-bedroom, only because with the current conditions and with public housing and how things are going and the cost of rental that is going up, people are tending to double up more. So are you going to limit the people that are in the 1 families to 1 person, or is that to make sure that happens the way you want it to? Or are you going to, how is that going to work?
Thank you for the question. So there will not be a limit of 1 person in a 1-bedroom unit. The typical, what we've seen historically operating our properties here locally and nationally is that the majority will be a single occupant, but certainly there could be a double occupant in a 1-bedroom. We never see more than that. Oftentimes in these days, they still would only have 1 car. Sometimes they will have 2. But stepping back, our overall parking ratio here is at a 1.65. That is as high or higher than the vast majority of developments that are built today, including ours. And in our experience, that is more than sufficient for the parking requirements that are needed today in these types of buildings.
So it's like 1.65 cars per unit? Is
1.65 parking spaces per unit.
Oh, okay.
Correct.
Okay. All right. That doesn't mean you know, I still have concerns about that, because as I said, I can see with all the tight parking there, people looking further up, they'll be going up Mechanic Street, they'll be trying to look up Prospect Street, all of the other areas. And the only reason I say this is because I know that section very well. Parking is very tight right there right now. And I know that business that's across the street, they fence off their area because they need to secure their parking. I've seen that too. So I just wanted to raise that issue because I am a landlord, and like I said, I'm not, you know, a professional developer or anything of that nature. But I just want to ensure that, you know, as much as we can make it successful for everybody, I'd like to, you know, make that comment. So thank you.
Thank you, Joyce. Steve?
Again, my name is Steve Peck. I live on Victoria Drive here in Marlborough. And the previous speakers did answer or bring up some of the questions that I had. One of the other questions was, it was mentioned that you were going to have a small number of electric vehicle charging stations. With the current move to electric cars, I would certainly encourage you to have many, many, many more, if not all the spaces being capable of being electric. Certainly in the next 20 years, and I hope this development is good for 20 years, we will see almost everyone go to electric cars. And that means you need the spaces and the power. Another question I had, with over 270 units, I estimate you'd like to see this place fill up within a year or so, and with normal turnover of rentals, I estimate you're going to have 20 moving vans a month trying to bring in people, and with 4-bedroom places, these moving vans might be tractor trailers. I do not see the capabilities of this facility handling 20 moving trucks on a weekend or a tractor trailer coming in on Mechanic Street. And with retail facilities on the ground floor, I expect that you will see a variety of jobbers bringing delivery trucks and parking on Mechanic and Lincoln, and double parking on Mechanic and Lincoln, because that is how deliveries are made today. If you could address that. I know it's mentioned in the traffic that there's some facility for this, but I could not find it myself.
Thank you, Steve. You want?
Sure. Phil, do you want?
Yeah. Thank you. To address the move-in question, we have accommodation areas off of Lincoln Street here that can accommodate a vehicle coming into the site, pull off this access roadway which goes around the building for fire purposes, but we can accommodate a staged vehicle here that'll allow one type of move into this portion of the building. And then our parking access off of Mechanic Street will have another staging area here that will allow vehicles to come in off of that corner stage and move into the building. So we do have accommodations noted on the site plans, and we can get into greater detail on that going forward.
Okay. Thank you, Steve. Any, come on up. Any other questions from the public? Please state your name for the record. Yep.
Hey, my name's Robert. I live in the downtown district. I just had a few concerns about the building. First of all, I think the building looks good. It looks a lot better than other developments that I've seen come through. But I'm really concerned about keeping the historic nature of Marlborough, especially in that area at the entrance of the rail trail. I know there's the old train depot there. I don't know if there's any way you could preserve like a part of that, maybe have like an interactive like mini museum or something there, somewhere where pedestrians can stop and, you know, enjoy, maybe as part of like an extended part of the restroom area. On the rail trail issue, I noticed that you guys were adding parking spots as well for the residents. If the residents are going to be parking there, where do the pedestrians that want to use the rail trail park?
If I may, so the 22 spaces that are near the rail trail Those are for users of the rail trail. That will be a city parking facility. So that's not for our residents. Our residents will park in the garage, which is a separate secure parking area. The 22 spaces in that lot that you see near the rail trail, that's for city residents, for folks that are using the rail trail.
Okay, so I'm assuming the city will be enforcing those spots?
Correct.
And keeping those spots empty?
To the best we can, Robert, that is correct.
I understand. Let's see. What about, I noticed there's a lot of greenage space currently, if you could look at the map, the aerial map that's there right now versus the footprint of the building. We see a lot of green space around there disappear. And I know that a few years ago, the city did a resilience building workshop where we focused on heat zones, hot zones around the city. There's one literally a few blocks away. So what you're adding is a huge concrete slab over all the greenage right there. And I noticed that you do have a few small green spaces in there. Is there any way to expand that, especially in the parking lot area? Maybe a tree canopy over the parking lot?
Well, thank you. So we have landscaping all around the parking area. Right now, as you may be aware, we've got an old building essentially right on the rail trail. And so in place of that will be a landscaped area that, again, will be part of the portion that's deeded to the city. So there'll be a landscaped area right along the trail that sort of provides a buffer between the trail and the parking area.
Okay. And the buildings, are they going to have any kind of solar panels or any kind of renewable energy on top of them?
We don't have that plan right now, but what we do have, as we've mentioned, is a green roof. It will be a vegetated roof that's there to retain water to the extent possible.
Okay. I would kind of implore you guys to maybe add some more greenage to that area. You guys are planting trees. They are young trees. They don't do much in terms of lowering the heat around that area. So it's just something to think about. Another concern I have is the amount of traffic that would be coming through there. You guys just are finishing up the Oxbow building in Sudbury, which is 200 plus units that'll be traversing Route 20, and you'll be adding 200 plus units in Marlborough, and the main thoroughfare is Route 20. There are going to be a lot of commuters, especially single families or single person units that will be commuting to the city. Is there any kind of infrastructure thoughts you guys have had, maybe work with the city to help mitigate traffic through there, since it's only one way in one direction, one way in the other direction?
Yep, so our traffic impact assessment calls for a few conditions, one of which is a transportation demand management system where we would work with the city to, minimize single car trips.
Okay, and in terms of the parking lot, I know one of my buddies had a question. Who's going to be managing those parking lots in the complexes?
So the parking garage that's for our residents, that will be managed by us, by Wood Partners, which is the landlord and operator of the facility. The parking garage, the parking lot next to the rail trail, again, that would be city property, so that would be maintained by the city.
Okay.
So if I could, Robert, if you're talking about access into the parking lot, I believe you guys, that's all key fobbed entry. I mean, it's not, the public can't get into the parking garage. The residents will be able to get into the parking garage.
Gotcha. All right. I mean, those are all the questions I have now, all the concerns I have. So, I'm looking forward to some changes, and I'm looking forward to actually something nice going in there instead of, gravel. So thank you for your time.
I'll just add one follow-up response to one of your questions about our green roof. As Phil from AMM reminded me, that does help cool the building as well, rather than just being a typical roof which generates heat or absorbs heat. The green roof will help cool the building as well.
That's great. It would help if the surrounding building, or the surrounding area around the building also helped to do that as well, because as we know, that whole area is mechanic shops, concrete, asphalt, so it'd be nice to see a lot more greenage, especially coming out of the rail trail.
Thanks, Robert. Anyone else with any questions? Sir.
My name is Rick McGrath. I live on Mechanic Street. I abut this property, and I have a few questions. Is the height of this building going to be higher than the Fry building?
We can see in real time a week from now. We're going to be doing a balloon test on Wednesday, the 18th.
I realize that, but you don't know that now?
So our building will be 52 feet. I don't know the Fry building off the top of my head. I believe that has one more story than we'll have, so, but I won't speculate. We'll see what the balloons tell us on Wednesday.
Okay. And is it going to be assigned parking in this parking garage for the units?
The signs? We assign. We don't assign. Remind, we don't assign parking, so there'll be parking available for residents as they come in, not reserved spaces.
Okay, speaking of coming in and going out, is there going to be anything done to, for the noise mitigation for the property next door, like mine?
So we're screening to the extent that we can all along the perimeter of the site. The parking garage will be, enclosed. It'll be open air on the sides, but largely enclosed. So in terms of cars coming and going, we don't anticipate significant noise.
Well, I hope you're right about that.
Thank you, Rick. And are there any other members of the public with questions? Any other members of the public with questions? Any other questions for the applicant?
I have a point of information. If I received comments via email with also some concerns, should that, and was asked to read it into the record, should that occur during the council portion or during the comments here?
You can read it now. I'm hoping it's not War and Peace. It's
No, it's not too long, but I did want to make sure I did my due diligence, because this is someone who lives pretty close to the property, if that's all right. They live, I believe it's 5 Chestnut at the corner of Chestnut and Mechanic. So I'm kind of going to summarize this the best I can. I'm going to read some of it directly. So we would imagine that any project of this scope that seeks variances from the city would be held to certain standards for saving energy, reducing greenhouse gas emissions, less reliance on building materials, which are now environmentally very costly to extract and transport, and incorporating design features that seek to conserve energy. From the drawings and photos on the plans, we have concerns about protections for the immediate neighbors. Setbacks at the ground level, the proposed building design would affect sunlight for its nearest residential neighbors as it sits to the south of them. If the setbacks from the perimeter were increased, the neighbor would be better protected, and we hope the city would ensure this. Setbacks for the upper stories to protect the privacy of the neighboring residences and minimize shading of their yards. The design should incorporate setbacks as the upper floors that exceed those at the ground level. As a mixed-use property, where are the service and delivery areas going to be placed, which I know we discussed. They said, where are the dumpsters? Will roofed enclosures be required for those to protect the neighboring properties? A lineup of these against a neighbor would be unacceptable. We also have concerns for the neighborhood at large, with hundreds of potential drivers planned to live at the proposed development. In addition to traffic, how will the excess highly concentrated traffic be handled? At commuter hours, traffic on Lincoln as well as Mechanic slows down and bottles up right now, and that's with a vacant lot on the corner. During morning and afternoon rushes, it is already congested with long waits to get through the stoplights and long waits to pull into or out of our driveway, for example, 100 yards away. There is insufficient street parking for the residents as it is. We are asked several times a year if we would sell driveway space to new residents who have no alternatives. If the building were smaller, the impact this neighborhood would have to absorb would be smaller. Our family has lived here for 80 years, has seen it diminish for decades, and now most recently begin to improve and redefine itself. It's a neighborhood of young families, many of whom have chosen it because of its traditional character. We've long wanted the property at Lincoln Mechanic to be developed in a way that would contribute to the quality of in-town life. An overly large structure will not do that. Thank you for voicing these concerns tonight. Thank you.
Okay, so that was a lot to try to answer. I think if you can submit that to the record, I'm sure.
Yes, I apologize. It was submitted under the wire before 8 p.m., so I didn't have time to forward it, but we'll do so you can answer those directly. Thank you.
Happy to. Thank you.
Thank you, Council Perlman. Any other questions from the public? Any other questions from the public? Any other questions from the public? Hearing none, I close that portion of the public hearing. Any public speaking in opposition?
Thank you, Mr. President. My name is Bill Burke. I live at 39 Church Street. The reason I'm opposed to this project is directly related to the traffic that'll encumber the site of Lincoln Street and Mechanic Street. I think we can all agree here that the Lincoln Street corridor is probably one of the most, if not the most, congested areas in town. We're talking about somewhere in the vicinity of over 500 parking spaces, I believe, total in this project. So if you're going to have some possibly 300 to 325 cars that are going to enter the Lincoln Street corridor, and cars are going to be coming from the east down Lincoln Street to try to get on Route 20 to head into Boston. You're also going to have cars coming from the west to try and get from the east to 495, and from the west to get onto Route 20. They use Lincoln Street as a shortcut. You also have from around 6:45 in the morning until almost 9 to 9:15 in the morning, school buses that are dropping off a large number of children, elementary, middle, and high school. That also repeats itself from 3 o'clock, 2:45, to almost 4 o'clock. And then, of course, you have the evening traffic that starts coming reverse from the east and the west. Finally, you have on-street parking on Lincoln Street, which is already creating a dangerous set of obstacles for people to get by on a good day, excuse me. Never mind if we have 12 to 14 inches of snow out there. The businesses that are on Lincoln Street are using the on-street parking to better their business. There's also a lot of people that live up in that area who park their cars on the street. It just seems to me that a project of this size, generating that kind of traffic, I think we're just asking for more clutter, more people that are just going to be jammed up in traffic, and it'll become, I think, something very detrimental to the area, which is right at the cusp of beautifying it. I think the design is great. I think that building, obviously that area is a real eyesore. It needs something. It needs something like this, quite honestly, gentlemen. But this is just too big. It's just too big. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bill. Any other members of the public speaking in opposition? Any other members of the public speaking in opposition? Any other members of the public speaking in opposition? Seeing none, I close that portion of the public hearing. Questions from the city councilors? Councilor Orm.
Thank you, Mr. President, and my fellows are welcome to stand up too if they want. We've been sitting for an hour and a half almost. The question I have is related, I'll start with the easy one, the restrooms. Definitely deeded to the city, but will you be setting them up with all the appropriate water and sewer? Everything will be ready, set, go?
Correct. It'll be turnkey operation.
Okay, and I would have to ask the city if they're going to, well, you may be able to answer it. Will you have heat inside these buildings?
I don't know. Do you know, Jim? Sure. Candidly, we haven't gotten that far along in the design, so we're certainly open to that discussion with the council as part of our review.
Sure. It concerns me if you don't, you have to close them earlier. That's why the question, just so you know. The basement area, so that is going to have facing windows on the backside in the basement areas. You're going to be where the elevation changes.
Correct. So units that are facing the courtyard will have windows to the courtyard. And that first level along the close to the corner there that was mentioned that they're below grade, essentially, they will have windows into the courtyard.
Are these going to be one bedrooms?
The exact mix is, throughout the different floors. I don't recall specifically whether they'll be the one bedrooms or the twos.
Well, the reason I ask is you have to afford light per the state housing codes and the building codes as well. I'd be curious how you're going to get sufficient lighting into these basement apartments, and the answer might be already here. I'm sure they designed it according to the state codes.
Correct. Yep. I'm going to turn to Mike from our design team to address that.
Yes, so they are, it will be a mix of different unit types, depending on where you are in the building, but all of the units, we're calling it the basement, but the ground level is at the floor of the units. It's not in the basement. The windows open up to the courtyard, and we've done multiple buildings that are 5 stories in this exact manner. And
So the back side of the apartment, can't have windows on that side, correct?
Correct.
I'll be
Because,
curious to
so
see
this
how-
is the corridor.
Yeah.
This is a 6-foot wide corridor that goes all the way around.
Okay.
All of the windows are facing interior here.
Just,
And all of the windows are 6 feet tall by 3 feet wide.
so that's how you get that percent light in there.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Jim had a very good point. It's the same configuration for all of the units, even on the outside. You have a corridor on one side with just one side of windows along the bedroom and living room areas.
In that level, right? You get up to the second floor, you have windows on both sides, I presume.
Well, so within the unit, you have windows on this side for
I
these
see what you're
units and
saying.
windows on this side for this unit.
Because the corridors.
The corridor, it doesn't have any windows, just the access to the unit. So all of the units are essentially the same as far as number of windows.
Curious to see, do you have any designs you'll be presenting of what they look like when you present the 1, 2, and 3 bedrooms? Will you be presenting
We will,
that to us?
yes.
Okay, I'd be curious to
Yeah.
see them, that's all. Gas station, it was mentioned by Mr. Bergeron, Attorney Bergeron. Have they resolved all the hazardous waste issues there? They did have leaks there and there was concerns. Has that been resolved?
Yes, that's my understanding, Councilor Oram. There are no activity or use limitations on the property. It's clean.
So how about the other 2 buildings you're buying? They're industrial. Have they been reviewed to make sure they meet all the?
We've done our due diligence on the, prior to moving forward with the application.
When you say that, will you have reports to show they meet 21E requirements and don't need further remediation if there are any issues? Or have they been even studied yet with the 21E report, which is a hazardous waste report?
Yeah, I can check with our team. We can get you any reports that we have.
I'd be curious to have those submitted for our view too. You brought up, I'm glad you brought up, you said it so fast the first time, but so you have 58% 1 bedrooms, 38% 2 bedrooms, and 4% 3 bedrooms, I presume.
Yep, Councilor, I can just tell you, so specifically, we have, of the 276, 161 are 1 bedroom, 105 are 2 bedroom, and 10 are 3 bedroom.
Okay.
And our affordables are mixed within the unit count as well.
And maybe a question for you, but I'd be concerned, councilors, that we don't look at any percent over on the bedroom count. We just saw that request on another project, and it concerns me, because then we're really not limiting it to what we wish to
If
have.
I can, Council Oram, that was due to the ordinance that executive district
this
was
one-
in. This is just a special permit.
Excellent, because, thank you, that really concerned me. Thank you, Mr. President. A couple more, and the bus stop was already noted, that I travel Lincoln Street now and then, and I see the traffic tied up. Rightfully so, you gotta let the children on the buses. Is there an area plan for this facility where the bus pulls in, or are they gonna do they have any area to pull in is the question?
I don't believe we've mapped that out yet, but we certainly will work with the school department to find an appropriate spot.
But you haven't designed one, have you? Like a physical, like they said for the moving truck, there's a place to pull to the side. Have you designed any side, place to pull a bus into?
No, we're not specific for school buses, no.
And percent cover of the site, how much, I know you have the green roofs, but how much percent of the site is being covered?
Phil, do you have that at the top of your head? I know our maximum is 75%, and we're below that. I can pull the exact number for you. Bear with me.
Excuse me. Approximately 65%, Counselor.
And that doesn't include the green roofs, you're not making that as not cover, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so that's 65% of the full site is being covered by concrete or the pool deck or the driveways and parking areas. Is that correct? Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. That's all I have for now. It'll be in subcommittee, and I may have more questions at that time. I think some of the questions requested by the people in our audience were excellent, and I will be bringing some of those up as well. But you did answer some of them as well, so thank you. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilor Oram. Are there any other questions from the councils? Councilor Doucette.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. This is truly a transformational proposal, and congratulations for you guys to bringing this here and getting it this far. A lot can be done in 5 years. So you did some good work on this. Some general questions. How do you plan to do heating for this? Is it going to be heat pumps, or is it going to be, I don't think it'd be natural gas because we go with the latest stretch codes. You're looking at geothermal.
We typically use natural gas, an aquatherm unit that provides heat and cooling for the
So
units.
cogeneration type thing?
Correct.
Okay.
And heat and hot water as well.
Okay. We got to get that through the stretch codes and see if that works with the stretch codes.
Correct.
Okay. Another question, just in general, the garage on slide 16, it shows precast garage beyond. Got this pretty picture to the right of it, but the garage is probably the ugliest piece and just left it as a dotted box. So I'd like to see what the garage would look like on Mechanic Street. Keep on going.
Just going to back up to that. We have a slide that shows the trail, and you get a glimpse of it. Just back up.
Precast garage beyond. So, no, the view.
Yeah, I'm getting there.
Okay.
It's a little delayed.
Yeah, no problem.
There we are. So if you see on the far right, gives you a glimpse. And what you'll see there is the panel that you can see that's not covered by trees is the full height. But you go a little bit to the further right, and the garage comes down a step. As it approaches Mechanic Street, it's actually, you're coming in, driving into the second level of the garage. So it is lower as you're approaching Mechanic Street in our residential abutter.
Okay, and then also you have colored panels on the side, some sort of decoration. I'm just wondering, from further up on Mechanic Street, what is this thing going to look like? You know, because while this side and the other side, all those sides are nice and pretty, this is your back end. And, I'm just trying to see how bad the back end looks. So that I'd like to see.
We can look into getting another view from that
Perspective.
angle, because
Yeah.
we've gotten the other views. We can look at that one as well.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Because I think overall, this is an outstanding effort, and looking forward to having discussions in urban affairs. Thank you, folks.
Council Perlman.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you all for the presentation. It was wonderful to hear the historical background and nice to see something going into this parcel. I have a couple questions and concerns I want to raise before it moves to urban affairs. The first, I know you mentioned that all of the abutters were notified and people within a certain radius, and they were given your contact information. Did anyone reach back out, or was there a community meeting held at all?
We didn't hold a community meeting. What we did, we send out the typical city legal notice to abutters, which doesn't tell you a whole heck of a lot. But prior to that going out, we mailed regular mail letters to the same list with our contact information, Wood Partners, myself, and we included a copy of the site plan so folks could have a sense of what they were looking at. We did hear from a few abutters with some questions, but not a substantial number, no.
Okay, so you were able to interact directly with those residents?
Correct.
Okay, that's good to hear. And then I know you mentioned kind of the mix of the bedroom size. Is there a price point that's going to be happening in some of these bedrooms? Because I know the higher the price, typically there will be more than one individual in a one bedroom.
Thank you for the question, Counselor. So within the mix of one bedroom, two bedrooms, and three bedrooms that's been stated, there's actually subcategories of those unit types. So for example, we start all the way from what we call a junior one bedroom, which is our smallest one bedroom, and that would be the entry price point into the project. We've done really well with having those for people who are price conscious but want to be in a Class A building, like what we would be building here. And so we range from that all the way up to a much larger 3-bedroom unit, and everywhere in between with standard one bedrooms, 1 bedroom plus dens, smaller 2 bedrooms, larger 2 bedrooms, and then into the 3 bedrooms. So the price point range will be vast, and that we can get folks in at one price point in the low end, and if there's more occupants or if they need more space, then on the larger end, the 3 bedrooms. We certainly haven't priced these units at this point, given that we're just going through the permitting process now. Then we'll design, and we'll have construction over a period of time, so the market could be vastly different than it is today. But I'd just like to point out that we will have an array of different unit sizes and price points for different folks.
That's helpful, and when that information is available, I think it is useful. We've asked that of other developers just to have a better understanding of the price points for all of the units, knowing that this is, from my understanding, to bring new residents into the city, right? So this isn't necessarily targeting people who are already here based on the prices, so it'd be helpful to note. Then the other question, kind of going off of Councilor Doucette's point, if there's more visibility, images of what further down it looks like, given the size, particularly from the more historic areas, like is this visible even from the downtown strip specifically? Or if you're at City Hall, I'm just curious with the angle, it's based on the hill.
As I mentioned, we're doing our balloon test next week on Wednesday, so we'll be able to get a good sense of what the tops of the buildings will look like. And as I mentioned to Councilor Doucette, we'll look to get another view from the Mechanic Street side, so people have a sense of what that will look like.
Great. And then I also was curious, I know this wasn't discussed, and this probably will happen more in the later versions of this, but what does the lighting look like around the property? I know right now, there are businesses, there are lights, but, when it gets more into the residential area, it isn't as bright. And I know in the past we've had concerns with residents if lights are coming into their home, and, particularly like the parking garage I know is covered, but how late is the lighting on the parking area of the rail trail and on the outside of the building?
Yeah, we'll have in the special permit decision the standard condition, which is downward facing lighting. It's a residential property. It's not to be lit up like a big box retailer.
Okay. And I imagine with the parking garage, people will be coming at different hours, and the lighting on that would be minimal within the building, but not necessarily visible from outside?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you. And then in terms of some of the parking that was along Mechanic or Lincoln, which the rendering was, are those going to be time-limited spots? I know in the past, I wouldn't want to see someone park there and just take up, a cafe spot or something. And I know it's a city kind of more of a maintenance question, but was just wondering if the intention is that that would be a fluctuating area of parking.
We'll work with the city on that. We don't have a clear plan for that right now. As I mentioned, the parking spaces will be partially on our property, partially within the right-of-way, but for all intents and purposes, they're going to function like a typical parallel space along any public way. So we'll certainly work with the city on what the rules will be.
And I'm not very far from this property, but I do walk this area. I drive this area a lot. It's very sharp turns. So it was interesting to see that there'd be a little bit more of half the city property, half this particular property being able to put those parking spaces. But I would, when it goes to further iterations, being very cautious of those turns, given that they are pretty sharp, and not wanting to have any issues. And, other mitigation to protect pedestrian safety, I think, is really important. If this is going to be more of a trafficked area, people are going to be moving across the street. There's trucks coming, the deliveries that were mentioned. And I guess two other points. One is I want to echo the historical element. Immediately when I was thinking this is kind of where do I know that this is a train depot? Where do I know that this is something that's historic? And whether that's in the character of the building design, the layout when you first enter onto the rail trail, I think that's something that people would really appreciate and kind of brings to life the character of this is a developer, and this is a building that actually takes care of where it's located and pays homage to that. And then my final point, I know a lot of people have been talking about the development in this area. People do live on Lincoln Street. There are businesses there. It's a large immigrant community. It's, very lively in that regard. And I was wondering what outreach might be done to ensure that, everyone who already is in that area gets to have a say about what's going. I know they might have gotten the abutter notices, but they might not be the landlords who might have received them. They might be the tenants. They might be residents who are renting. And I know that this is, I would say Lincoln Street really is the lifeblood of the immigrant community here in Marlborough.
As I mentioned, Councilor Perlin, we sent letters to all the neighbors that we can get on the abutters list. And the balloon test notice also went out to those folks as well. So we've been keeping up with the mailed outreach as much as we can. And all the notices have been posted on the city website and through social media as well.
Okay, well, if there's even an opportunity to make them, bilingual or trilingual, I know many residents of the area also speak Spanish and Portuguese, and I'm sure might be very receptive to having the information written in those languages as well. Thank you.
Any other questions from the councilors? Questions from the councilors? Councilor Irish.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Attorney Falk, and thank you to Mr. Lambert for reaching out to me back in January. I know I had a lot of questions in regards to what was going on in the project, and you stayed and listened to all those questions. The biggest one, and I'll wait to site plan review, and when it goes into urban, is the buffer with the parking garage. I know that was the issue, and the outdoor lighting, and bringing the abutters. I know you've been open to having the abutters get back to you, but the biggest thing, and I'll wait for site plan review, is about the parking garage for that particular house that is on Mechanic Street. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilor Irish. Councilor Roby.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you all for the presentation. I also had a little bit of a preview for this. I do have a couple of further questions from what were asked by everybody, maybe some clarification. So you had stated that the parking garage will only be for the residents, yet in your parking detail, you have 8 spaces counted for retail. How will they get in there?
It wouldn't be in the garage. That our intent is that the
You said they would use a key fob for the residents to get into the garage.
Correct.
But on page 102, you detailed that 8 spaces will be for retail in the garage. You're counting them as your spaces for retail, 41 that you have. So how will those spaces, how will people access those spaces if they don't live there?
Oh, okay. Yep. Jim Lambert pointed in the right direction. So we have 8 spaces that are outside the garage. So the garage would be for residents only. If you'll see, let me just see if this clicker will work for me.
So the 8 along the back where you have 1
Correct.
handicap space. Okay, so I can't find anything in the city code regarding a number of handicap spaces, and I didn't really have time to look to see. I would assume that there's federal rules on parking requirements for disabilities. Do you know what the numbers are, both for the garage, where I see, I think, 10 handicap, and then you only have the 1 no on-street handicap spaces, but 1 on the back side?
I know we've provided the number that we're required to. I also know that our building commissioner is well aware and always holds us to that number. So whatever we're required to have, we will have.
Okay. I'm trying to keep track of all my notes. I know the next public hearing is going to be on a requested change. You're asking, well, not you, but the plan is to be able to vary the dimensional parking design and landscaping requirements. And it's just for the whole neighborhood business, but it kind of came from this project. So can you tell me what of those you're not meeting, because I can't see any that you're not meeting, and why you need this zoning change?
Sure. So there are 2 that we're not meeting right now. One is the front setback along Mechanic Street. Because we're a corner lot, we're required to meet the front setback along both of the streets. And so we have the 25 feet along Lincoln, we do not have the 25 feet along Mechanic. So that's one.
Okay.
And the second is the requirement in the code that we can't park in our front yard. We have to have a buffer between the frontage and where the parking may be, and the street parallel parking spaces are on our property line right in the front setback. And so in order to have those, we need the zoning amendment.
Okay, thank you. And I know this has gone to site plan for a preliminary look. I guess I had asked you for 2 more views, and I appreciate your doing them. I think the one that I really wanted to show, because my concern, as everybody's talked about the traffic on Lincoln Street, is cars coming out of that parking spaces for people parking for the rail trail, cars trying to cross Lincoln Street on the rail trail, plus cars screaming down Lincoln Street from the hill. So I'm not exactly thrilled about cars parking in that area. The bathroom, I think, is a nice idea, but my understanding is there's going to be some work with the other lot that the city owns that's further down the rail trail. Maybe that's a better place for a bathroom. And I guess that's a conversation that we'll have, whether it's heated and open year-round or not. But I guess that's the kind of thing we'll have to talk about in, but if there's a way to show that view more, if I'm a car sitting on Highland Street, or if I'm a bicyclist on the rail trail, what will I see?
Okay.
So I don't think you quite did it with that. Plus, I'm not sure, what are the buildings that I see behind that sign that's the city information sign? Are those across the street?
Some of them are. So the one immediately behind the sign, that's the new restroom, the city-owned restroom.
All right.
And
That
the
sounds
other
like
roofs that you see are across the street.
Okay. And then I did have one more question. You have 13 spaces for cars on the roof. But you're talking about the roof being a green roof. Will the fact that there's cars parked on it with their exhaust interfere with the nice aspect that we think of as a green roof?
So the green roof will be on the building portion of the residential portion of the site. The garage is not a green roof.
Okay, so it'll be
That's a small
lower
part.
than or the same level as?
It'll be roughly the same level.
Okay, so there still will be some ability for all of that exhaust to get to the green roof. But at least it's not right next to it. And then to go back to the picture of the garage, my understanding is what looks like glass is actually just open space?
Correct.
Okay, just so everybody is clear that that's not covered. It's open like a typical garage is open. All right, yes.
Yep.
Yeah, it almost looks like glass from the way you've got it compared to the rest of the building. I just wanted to clarify. All right, I will probably have lots more questions. I know this is in urban. It may be a while before it gets there because I would like to make sure that both of the zoning change and that the other piece that you're asking for are done before we actually take it up in urban in case there's issues we need to cover. So we'll see you soon.
Thank you, Councilor Roby. Any other questions from the councilors? Councilor Doucette.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I just got one other thing I wanted to add. So the bicycle trail ends basically at Lincoln, on one end of Lincoln Street. And if someone was on a bicycle and decided to go west up Lincoln Street, they're going to be on the sidewalk, or they're going to be on the street on the other side of traffic? And that's a rhetorical question. I'm not looking for an answer now.
Okay.
But you got to figure out, you keep on saying the bicycle trail is an asset. I agree with you on that. How does the bicycle trail fit into the rest of the perimeter of the building? So I think that's a critical question you guys need to figure out, because that extends the trail around that whole property. If not, it's a dead end. And I don't think the whole idea is to add add the asset and extend the asset. We're adding it downtown, so it also makes it more appealing to basically bike up to the property, the shops that are on Mechanic Street. So, understood. Thank you.
I would just point out, Councilor Doucette, that the city got a grant to extend the rail trail from the corner of Lincoln down Cashman, down Prospect.
Yes.
You see all that, it's all
I've seen it.
wide and paved.
Yes, it's wonderful. I mean, but this is perpendicular to that, to go through the property area. So thank you.
Any other questions from the councilors? Any other questions from the councilors? Any other questions from the councilors? Hearing none, I close that portion of the public hearing and the entire public hearing, and this is, as Councilor Roby said, in urban affairs. Agenda item number 6.
Now is the time for the public hearing on the proposed zoning amendment from Attorney Brian Falk on behalf of Alta Marlborough LLC, Wood Partners, to Chapter 650, Section 39, the Neighborhood Business District, Order Number 22-100-8571.
Okay, this public hearing will be taken in 4 stages. Again, bless you, public speaking in favor, questions from the public, public speaking in opposition, and questions from the city council. We'll start with the public speaking in favor, starting with the applicant, and I ask the applicant to state their name and address for the record. Attorney Falk.
Thank you, President Austin. Councilors, for the record, Brian Falk from Myrick O'Connell, 100 Front Street in Worcester, representing the applicant Alta Marlborough LLC, an affiliate of Wood Partners. I'm going to go as fast as I can because you've already heard all about this project. As mentioned by Councilor Roby, we're requesting a zoning amendment. It's an amendment just to the neighborhood business district, and it's an amendment that only affects mixed-use projects in that district. This is a request from the property owners of our development site, Marlborough Economic Development Corporation and Kobe Incorporated, And this would allow, by special permit, the council to modify dimensional parking landscaping requirements applicable to a mixed-use development in the neighborhood business district. The language that we used is almost identical to language that's in 3 of the overlay districts that were recently approved by the city council, where similarly applicants were looking to work with the council to fine-tune their plans without having to run the risk of a variance and going to the zoning board of appeals. From our perspective, mixed-use projects are properly before the council, and the council should have the latitude under the zoning to modify dimensional parking and open space controls as makes sense for the project. So that's all we're proposing. Again, it's by special permit. There's nothing by right. It would be part of the decision that the council would make as to whether they want to allow a developer to modify the dimensional controls applicable to the project. As I mentioned in the last hearing, there are 2 items right now where when we looked to do our layout, we had problems with the current controls. Number 1, front setback, because we have 2 front setbacks as a corner lot. That's not something that most projects would have. And number 2, parking in the front setback. Because of the way we've arranged parallel parking, the public way in that area is not big enough to accommodate completely on-street parallel parking, so we have some of the parking on our property line. That's not permitted under the zoning ordinance right now. So by special permit, the council could modify dimensional parking, open space controls. With that, happy to take your questions, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Attorney Falk. Any other members of the public speaking in favor? Any other members of the public speaking in favor? Any other members of the public speaking in favor? Hearing none, I close that portion of the public hearing. Any questions from the public? Any questions from the public? Steve?
As part of the parking and on-street that you've mentioned, will there be any specifications for motorcycles?
That's not currently in our plans. We can certainly look into that.
You're welcome. Any other questions from the public? Any questions from the public? Any questions from the public? Hearing none, I close that portion of the public hearing. Any members of the public speaking in opposition? Members of the public speaking in opposition? Any members of the public speaking in opposition? Hearing none, I close that portion of the public hearing. Questions from the City Council? Councilor Doucette.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I just got a general question. Your arguments are well merited, and it's worth having the conversation and seeing the issues with this. But this change would make it applicable to change this for any special permit going forward, right?
For only mixed-use projects, only in the neighborhood business district. That's
okay.
it.
Okay. Thank you for the clarification on that. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Councilor Doucette. Any other questions from the councilors? Questions from the councilors? Any questions from the councilors? Seeing none, I close that portion of the public hearing and the entire public hearing, and this is in Urban Affairs.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Jim. Thank you, members of the public, for hanging in there. We'll take a 2-minute recess to let everybody stretch. Call the council back in session at 9:51. We'll continue with agenda item number 7.
Communication from Solicitor Jason Grossfield regarding City Council Orders 2122-100, 8402A3, and 2122-100, 8402B4 regarding an opinion on ambiguity associated with the two orders, and any suggested wording to resolve the same.
Councilor Roby, could I have you come take the podium, please?
Is there any discussion?
Madam President.
Councilor Ossing.
Thank you, Madam President. I believe all the councilors have read the solicitor's attempt to address ambiguity, say that. So I would say that the ambiguity associated with the orders can be argued either way. If you feel strongly on one side, you'll push that point. If you feel strongly on the other side, you'll push that one. What is clear, the letters submitted by the mayor and the actions taken by the council can be improved. Very simple. So to clear up the ambiguities and align the mayor and the city council in their efforts to move forward with the fire station, I'm recommending a do-over. Really simple. This do-over will demonstrate the collaborative working relationship between the mayor and the city council with the goal of both parties, which is to move the West Side Fire Station forward. So I offer the following motion for the City Council's consideration. The motion is the mayor submit a corrected copy of the order that will authorize the city to acquire the property at 100 Lock Drive, the appropriation from the undesignated funds in the amount of $5,092,666.66 for said acquisition, authorize the mayor to accept the deed for 100 Lock Drive. The mayor submit a transfer sheet for $5,092,666.66 from the undesignated fund to the land acquisition account. And the mayor submit the transfer of $1,422,500 from the undesignated fund to the now approved West Side Fire Station account. The mayor signed that account now, so that's now approved. And then the revised order and 2 transfers should appear on our May 23rd agenda. And the council will postpone the votes on the mayor's vetoes of those 2 orders, which are agenda items 19 and 20 on today's agenda. We'll postpone those votes to May 23rd. So the motion accomplishes a couple of things. It addresses the mayor's concern regarding the ambiguity in the order by allowing him to submit a revised order addressing the ambiguities and the source of the transfer. It corrects the transfer sheet for the land acquisition to align with the revised order. It submits the transfer from the undesignated funds in the amount of $1,422,500 into the now approved West Side Fire Station stabilization account that all the councils have worked on very hard to obtain. And the council would uphold the mayor's veto orders of 8402 A and B, which would be agenda items 19 and 20. And more importantly, and I think this is the real key, it aligns the mayor and the city council on the goal of moving forward with the West Side Fire Station. So all the past squabbling of what letter said what and what mark, we're all done. He gets the opportunity to clean it all up. I think we all know what we want. I believe our orders that we approve do that, but if he doesn't, that's okay. Here's his opportunity to clean it all up. And I think we would collaboratively work with the mayor in order to do that. So that's my motion, Madam President.
Right. I would suggest maybe first we have to take up the actual communication. Do we need to accept and place that on file first, and then we can take up your...
Sure. Motion to accept and place on file the communication from the solicitor.
It's been moved and seconded to accept the communication. Is there discussion on that piece? Seeing none, all those in favor? And the vote carries. And now we have the order that was discussed by Councilor Ossing. Is everybody clear? You all have a copy of the order. It's got a lot of detail to it. It can be repeated if anybody has a concern. It's been moved, and I will second. Is there discussion? Councillor Doucette.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Just have one question just for clarification, so that the orders, items 19 and 20 for tonight's agenda, we'll just let them pass? We don't vote on those whatsoever because we're voting on a third one instead? I'm just looking for clarification.
Would you like to respond to that, Councillor Austin?
Thank you, Madam President. Yeah, so what we would do, Council just said, is we would when we get to items 19 and 20, we would postpone them to the May 23rd, take action in recognition of good faith that the mayor will work cooperatively with the council to send the clean version of the fire station order back down to the council. I think this is a win-win for both parties.
Agreed.
And puts everybody in the right spot, and which is our ultimate goal of moving ahead with the West Side Fire Station.
Okay. So assuming that that order does come down, are these other two just put aside? Because that would be replacing those two, right? Is that the intent? It's going to be a new order, right?
If I could, Madam President?
Councilor
So the intent would be the mayor
This is a
would-
great learning experience, so I appreciate it.
No, hey, we're all learning on this, trust me. The intent would be the mayor would send the cleaned-up version. And so the cleaned-up version would have all the right words, with the right transfer sheet, with the right account for the funds to come from and go into, and then we would approve that, and then if we approve that, then it would be appropriate to then either approve the mayor's veto, or not vote on the mayor's vetoes and just let them hold, which would work. But I would
These are effectively
discourage
put
the council.
aside. These two are put aside, effectively. We don't act on them.
Right now.
No,
Because again, the mayor's got to follow through on his part, which is a
Unders-
very big part. I don't want to.
Absolutely. I'm assuming the mayor's going to do the right thing, right, Mayor? No, but seriously. But if that order does come down, we just let these two just settle on the side and, expire at the end of the year type of thing. Okay, that's where I was going with that, but thank you.
Is there further discussion? Councilor Wagner?
Since the transfer to the fire stabilization account has been such a bone of contention, how critical is it? If this is something that's happening right now, and that's part of how I understand the conflict, is why add another account where there has to be yet another meeting and another transfer, and does it slow it down? And it just, again, that final goal that I'm so glad we're still talking about and trying to move towards, that fire station is crucial. I feel like this is I'm not sure if continuing with this barrier is how crucial it is. And just, I'm not sure why. Is it crucial? If that thing's going to kill the whole deal again, why are we still talking about it?
Madam President?
Councilor Austin?
So I will state unequivocally right now, if he sends down the clean order with everything but that transfer, I will support it. However, I will be putting that amendment on every free cash transfer, which you're going to see in item 18 this evening, because he should have to spend that free cash his way and not let us spend what we worked hard to get it to spend, what the council decided. All right, if you're willing to make that fair thing, let him send down the order. I'll wave the white flag on the $1.4 million to have it tied to the fire station order to go ahead and proceed. I'm happy to do that, Council. In the spirit of compromising and working with my mayor friend. Thank you.
I would also point out, of course, it would be up to the Chair of Finance, but I think that order could be approved on the floor that night and not have to be referred. I saw Councilor Navin.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you, President Ossing, for working so hard to file this tonight. I will be supporting this amendment. I think, most of us here have all talked for quite a while how we support the building of West Side Fire Station. There's certainly some questions about how we get there. But we're never going to figure it out if we don't try to work collaboratively together with the mayor and with ourselves. And there are going to be differences of opinions, and that's fine. That's the whole point. That's how we're going to get the best final project. But I think this is a big step forward. It kind of allows us to have a reset and allows us to move forward. It gives the mayor the authority, and I would just, to answer what Councilor Wagner said, why is this so important? It is certainly important that we don't have any more stumbling blocks along the way. We're gonna have them. This one is very early on. We've got a lot more hard conversations to have. We don't even need to give this approval for the mayor to start these conversations, to start negotiating on the property. We are here and it is a good place to start, but we should be also working and not forgetting what the president said about trying to get the money that we have negotiated through special permits to help defer the costs of this fire station for the residents who will be paying for it. But that's already further down the rabbit hole than I want to get. I think the important part that we want to identify here is that we are going to try to work together in moving this forward and to stop this kind of back and forth and moving together in some unity. So, thank you, Madam President.
Is there further discussion? Council Perlman.
Thank you, Madam President. I just want to echo the comments I know Councilor Navin just made, and appreciate President Ossing for taking the time to go through a very complicated process of historical dates and times and order numbers to try to come to a collaboration between what we are looking for and what the mayor wants. I really hope the mayor takes this opportunity as an olive branch to move forward. It's so important that both bodies are working together and want to recenter again how important this fire station is for the residents and want to make sure it moves quickly, but that we also don't lose, the council's authority. And it's so important that we don't set a precedent for this type of thing to happen in the future. So I appreciate the work the president did, and I will be supporting this motion tonight. Thank you.
Is there further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? And the chair will also vote in favor, so it's 9 in favor and no opposed. That's everybody. Thank you.
All set? All right, agenda item number 8.
Communication from the Planning Board regarding a favorable recommendation of the proposed zoning map amendments for parcels of land located on Jefferson Street and a small portion of Lincoln Streets, identified as map 56, parcels 147, 48, 50, 51, 52, and 53. In addition to map 56, parcels 154, 55, 56, 57, 58, order number 2122-100, 8475. C.
Councilor Roby.
Thank you. That was a lot to read. Move to accept and place on file.
Motion to accept and place on file the planning board's recommendation. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? It is filed 9-0. Agenda item number 9.
Petition for Massachusetts Electric to replace 3 sections of direct buried cable and replace them with new primary cable and conduit on Stone Hill Road.
Councilor Brown.
I move to refer to Public Services and set a date for a public hearing.
Motion made and seconded to refer to public service, and we'll set a public hearing for May 23rd. So motion made and seconded to refer to the Public Services Committee and set a public hearing for May 23rd. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? It is approved for going to public service and a public hearing on May 23rd. 9-0. Agenda item number 10.
Application for renewal of a junk dealer secondhand dealer license from Gene Rebello, DBA Post Road Used Auto Parts of Marlborough, Inc., 785 Boston Post Road East.
Councilor Brown.
I move to refer to Public Services.
Motion made and seconded to refer to the Public Services Committee. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? It is referred to Public Service. 9-0. Agenda item 11.
Notice from Attorney Brian Falk on behalf of Alta Marlborough LLC regarding a notice of a balloon test relative to the proposed project at Lincoln and Mechanic Streets to occur on Wednesday, May 18th, 2022 at 5 p.m.
Councilor Roby.
Thank you, Mr. President. Move to accept and place on file the communication.
Motion made and seconded to accept and place on file the communication. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? It is filed 9-0. Agenda item number 12.
Communication from National Grid regarding notice of potential work relative to their current vegetation management plan.
Councilor Navin.
Thank you, Mr. President. Motion to accept and place on file.
Motion made and seconded to accept and place on file the National Grid correspondence. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? It is filed 9-0. Agenda item number 13.
Minutes of boards, commissions, and committees.
Mr. President.
Councilor Doucette.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Motion to accept and place on file the minutes of the boards, commissions, and committees.
Motion made and seconded to accept and place on file all the minutes. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? It is filed 9-0. Agenda item 14.
Claims.
Councilor Doucette.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Motion to send the claims to the legal department.
Motion made and seconded to send the claims to the legal department. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor? Opposed? It is sent to the legal department 9-0. Reports of committees. Who wants to go first? Councilor Irish.
Thank you, Mr. President. Finance Committee met on May 2nd and continued on May 4th, 2022. We had one item on the agenda that evening, order number 22-100-8584. Mayor Vision's proposed FY 2023 operating budget in the amount of $181,260,899. Chair Irish read the mayor's April 21st, 2022 letter submitting the budget for review and approval in the amount of the $181,260,899, representing a 4.18% increase over this year's due primarily to increased staffing needs and fuel and utility costs. The Finance Committee reviewed each of the items listed in the budget summary over the course of 2 meetings together with the mayor and municipal department heads and the assistant department heads, and proposed the following adjustments in the mayor's budget, which is in that report and from the committee meeting. On a motion made by Council Perlman, second by Chair Irish, by a vote of 3-0, the Finance Committee voted to refer back to the City Council Mayor's Vision proposed FY 2023 operating budget with reductions in the amount of $806,800 as listed in the above table, resulting in an amended proposed FY 2023 municipal operating budget in the amount of $180,454,099, and further to recommend that the mayor be requested to submit a budget amendment to fund the current position in the assessor's office, line item 50770, senior clerk. This impact of the Finance Committee's FY 2023 budget adjustments. The mayor's proposed FY 2023 budget of the $181,260,899, less the recommended adjustment of $806,800, equals a new FY 2023 budget of $180,454,099. This represents an increase of $6,470,735 from FY 2022, or an increase of 3.72%, and reduces the tax rate for the average household, Mr. President likes this number, of $262 to approximately $234. We adjourned at, I think it was 10:14 p.m. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilor Irish. Any other reports of committees? Councilor Roby.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Urban Affairs and Housing Committee met on Thursday, May 5th. We also had only one item on our agenda, Council Order Number 21, and I guess it should be 22. 108-475, a communication from Mayor Vigent requesting the City Council consider a proposed zoning change regarding a portion of Jefferson Street. So the chair went through the timeline. This had been referred to Urban Affairs but was not advertised and was held over to 2022 when we got the request from the developer to act on the property. So we had a public hearing on April 11th. The Planning Board had theirs on April 25th. The chair read the letter from the Planning Board with their favorable recommendation to rezone as suggested. The chair had offered some amendments to the mayor's order and discussion was held. Councilor Wagner moved to approve the zoning amendments as submitted by the mayor. Motion was seconded and the chair asked for discussion. Councilor Doucette moved to amend the original recommendation for parcel 56-153, which was to change from commercial automotive to neighborhood business to be commercial automotive to RB, which is rural residential business. No, it's not important. The motion was seconded and carried 5-0. A discussion continued on the original motion as amended. Councillor Doucette moved to amend to have parcels 56, 147, 148, and 150 remain as commercial automotive. The motion was seconded and the vote was 3-2 and did not carry. The chair called for a vote on the original motion to amend the mayor's order with the amendment for parcel 56, 153, and that motion carried 5-0. We adjourned at 7:48.
Thank you, Councilor Roby. Are there any other reports of committees? Seeing none. Agenda item. Wait, 15.
Order number 22-100, 8567, a transfer request in the amount of $589,691, which moves funds from Economic Development to MEDC to fund the fiscal year 23 operations of the Marlborough Economic Development Corporation. Recommendation of the Finance Committee is to approve.
Councilor Irish.
Thank you, Mr. President. Move the recommendation of committee to approve.
Move the recommendation of the committee to approve the transfers. Is there any discussion on the committee's recommendation? Seeing none. All those in favor? Opposed? It is approved, 9-0. Don't spend it all in one place. Agenda item 16.
Order number 22-100, 8536A, a bond request in the amount of $500,000 for the cost of reconstruction or making extraordinary repairs to the Sligo Hill water tank. Recommendation of the Finance Committee is to approve.
Councilor Irish.
Thank you, Mr. President. Move the recommendation of committee to approve.
The committee's recommendation is to approve. Is there any discussion on the motion of the committee to approve? Councilor Roby.
Thank you, Mr. President. As noted in the agenda, this was a vote of 3-2. There was a lot of discussion that happened on other orders regarding bond requests with conversations about using ARPA money instead of, and I think that this was the beginning of that conversation. If you remember, there was another order that did not carry when it was to move to approve. I would ask that the council vote no on this. Let us have the conversation with the mayor on the ARPA money that we need to have and decide what from his suggestion we want to approve and what we want to go forward with rather than bonding, to use the ARPA money. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Roby. Councilor Perlman.
Thank you, Mr. President. Councilor Romy really summed it up, but I just want to also echo for the council to vote against this. I was in the negative on this original vote. I do think this speaks to the larger ARPA conversation that we need to have, and I think to vote on this would be premature since we want to be able to have a dialogue about how the money is used. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Perlman. Is there any other? Councilor Brown.
Thank you. I was a part of the original that had voted in favor as part of the Finance Committee. And in light of discussions that happened further along in the evening and since then, I am actually going to be changing my vote and I will be voting in opposition to it. So I just wanted to let that be known before we take the full vote.
Thank you, Councilor Brown. Councilor Oram.
Thank you. Well, it was just said, so ditto to Councilor Brown's note, that I was one of the ones that voted in favor. Then we had further discussion, as Councilor Roby mentioned, and it opened up a wider picture. I don't see a problem with dialogue. I hope to see the mayor down here to be discussing this with us either in finance or as a whole city council, so I will also be changing my vote. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilor Oram. Any other discussion on the motion? Councilor Wagner.
I hear the concerns, and I just want to put out there again, I'm concerned about the conversation dragging on. It's already May. We have June meetings. Then we're into July and August. We could easily be next fall and just be spinning our wheels talking about all the projects that should be done. When again, I am concerned when we heard the reason behind why this project needs to happen and some of the other capital improvements. There's been a lot of discussion. It's been put forward by our professional directors who are the closest to these concerns, and I just want to remind us, I get we want to talk about it, I'm not going to stand in the way of that, but this could easily devolve into next fall. We're still talking about what should happen while nothing's getting done. So I think we need to remember that.
As a point of information, Council Wagner, I would argue the counter that the mayor can come down at any time with what we've asked for, and we're happy to have that dialogue. It's up on the 4th floor. Councilor Doucette.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I think, and I appreciated the conversations we had during the Finance Committee meetings, talking about what this is, and I agree, you know, there could be another way to cover the cost of this. I think it's important to get it done, and I think we need to have that conversation with the mayor, because we do have a bucket of money, we need to understand how it's spent. So that doesn't necessarily mean we disagree that this work needs to be done. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Doucette. Any other councilors? On the motion to approve the bonds, so a yes vote is to approve, a no vote is to deny. I'll have a roll call vote and ask the clerk to please read the roll, please.
Councilor Roby?
No.
Councilor Landers is absent. Councilor Pearlman?
No.
Councilor Oram?
No.
Councilor Dumas is absent. Councilor Brown?
No.
Councilor Doucette?
No.
Councilor Wagner?
No.
Councilor Ossing?
No.
Councilor Navin?
No.
And Councilor Irish?
Yes.
1 in favor, 8 opposed, 2 absent, sir.
The vote on the bond for $500,000 has 1 in favor, 8 opposed, 2 absent. It does not carry. Agenda item number 17.
Order number 22-100, 8536C, a bond request in the amount of $5,175,000 for the purpose of paying the cost of street construction, Recommendation of the Finance Committee is to approve.
Councilor Irish.
Thank you, Mr. President. Move the recommendation of committee to approve, please.
The Finance Committee has made a recommendation to approve the $5 million bonds for streets. Any discussion on the motion? Councilor Roby.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is one that I will definitely vote in favor, and I went back and looked through the history from 2013 going forward, and consistently the City Council has approved a street bond for streets to be able to be repaired, reconstructed, whatever is decided upon by the engineering department. And I think that the mayor gets ideas for which streets by having conversations with the ward councilors. And then I know there's some battles as to who gets to have them on the list every year, but eventually they do get done. So I will definitely be supporting this and hope that everyone else does too. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Roby. Any other discussion on the bonds for the streets? Seeing none, I will ask the clerk to call the roll, and remember, a yes vote is in favor of the bond, a no vote is in opposition to the bond.
Councilor Doucette?
Yes.
Councilor Landers is absent. Councilor Navin?
Yes.
Councilor Oram?
Yes.
Councilor Pearlman?
Yes.
Councilor Irish?
Yes.
Councilor Brown?
Yes.
Councilor Roby?
Yes.
Councilor Wagner?
Yes.
Councilor Ossing?
Yes.
And Councilor Dumas is absent. 9 in favor, 2 absent, sir.
The street bond for $5,175,000 is approved, 9 in favor, none opposed, 2 absent. Agenda item number 18.
Order number 22-100, 8536D, a transfer request in the amount of $1,448,100 from undesignated fund to various departmental capital requests, and the recommendation of the Finance Committee is to approve.
Councilor Irish.
Thank you, Mr. President. Move the recommendation of committee to approve, please.
Finance Committee has made a recommendation to approve the transfer request from free cash. Is there any discussion on the motion? If I could have Councilor Roby come assume the podium, please.
Councilor Ossing?
Thank you, Madam President. So councilors, and I hear what you're saying, Councilor Wagner, as I told you, I'm happy to get rid of that amendment on the fire station and move it to free cash. So the mayor is asking to spend free cash on certain items, and we're asking to take advantage of free cash for items that we worked hard for. So being able to let him do what he wants and not let what the council wants, I don't think sends the right message. So I'm proposing a motion to amend the free cash. So in other words, he'll be able to spend that free cash once he sends down the motion for the fire station transfer and approves it. So the motion is, or the proposed motion to amend the existing free cash transfer is, expenditures of these funds are contingent upon the mayor's approval of the transfer of the Phase 1 Green District Mitigation Funds in the amount of $1,422,500 from undesignated funds into the West Side Fire Station Stabilization Fund. The fund's not, he signed off the order 3 weeks ago approving the fund. So the fund's there. There's $11 million in free cash right now. He hasn't used it yet. All right? He wants to use a portion of it for his capital request. I'm in favor of that. I think that's the right use of it. I'm also in favor of using what this council did, which is transferring that $1.4 million into the West Side Fire Station account that we all agree we want. The money's there. It's still bothering me why the transfer won't come down. I still haven't got that good answer. So with this amendment to the motion, all it does is say you can spend the money you want on capital requests from free cash after you send us the transfer for the fire station. Thank you, Madam President.
It's been moved and seconded to amend the approval of the transfer. Is there discussion on the amendment? Councilor Doucette.
Thank you very much, Madam President. So my question is, we're putting a hook on putting the money into, to be spent once it gets approved by saying, oh, you got to do this other action, which is otherwise disconnected with this order. We're tying it together, right? We're putting a hook in to do this, okay? So I understand the wheres and whys, agree with them. My concern is what is the legality of that type of action as putting a modification of an order, requiring the mayor to do something that, is it because they're both coming from free cash? Is that the intent of why you want to put this hook in? And I'm asking that in a way to, if you don't mind, answer the question directly. So,
if I can, Madam President?
Councilor Ossing.
Yeah, so it's a lot cleaner. So this really addresses Councilor Wagner's concerns, it disassociates it from the buying of the fire station.
Yeah.
I mean, I still believe it should be there, but in the spirit of compromising, I'm okay with not having him send it down as part of the fire station work. But if he's going to use free cash, because he's going to come back for us for snow and ice, in finance is a transfer for almost $700,000 in electricity, not from snow and ice, but from accounts. I plan on making this motion for all of them. There is no valid reason not to send the transfer down. Or please, if you think there is, enlighten me, because I haven't heard it yet. Again, $11 million sitting in free cash. $11 million. All right? Hasn't spent it, it's all there.
And because all the requests are from free cash, you can put the hook in and have it stick, effectively.
That's how I read it, Councilor Doucette. That is correct.
Thank you for the clarification. Appreciate it.
Madam President, if I could, I think it's important to quote from the mayor's letter in February where he approved the establishment of the West Side Fire Station account. And I quote in the mayor's letter, "We, being the mayor's office, look forward to working with the city council on this important endeavor." So I'll let you interpret what you think that means. I think it means he wants to work with the council to move forward. And I encourage him to do that and look forward to working with the mayor. Thank you, Madam President.
Is there further discussion? Councilor Navin.
Thank you, Madam President. Just real quick on this because the hour is late and we have talked about this issue once or twice before. Right, these are all important things. I don't want to hold up any of these important projects, right? Just to read it, just for folks at home, right? There's a fire truck, there is the refurbishing of pools. We are coming up on our recreational season. There's an expansion at Evergreen Cemetery. There's important HVAC upgrades, and one that is near and dear to the folks of Ward 6 is the Reservoir Street bump out, which is going to dramatically improve the safety going across the causeway down at Fort Meadow, something that I am very glad the mayor is looking at doing. These are all incredibly important, as is the city council's ability to negotiate special things or special items in special permits. It sets a dangerous precedent if we go forward and we start negotiating things from developers to help this city, and then we are not able to follow through on that. So I will be voting in favor of this amendment. I hope that not only does the free cash transfer to fund these very important projects, but also to help defer the cost of this fire station moving forward. Thank you, Madam President.
Is there further discussion? Seeing none, on the amendment, all those in favor? The amendment carries 9. There's nobody opposed. So on the motion to approve the transfers of $1,448,100 with the amendment, all those in favor? And the chair votes, so that's 9 in favor. Thank you.
Okay, moving on, agenda item number 19.
Order number 2122-100, 8402A3, mayoral veto relative to the proposed order to authorize the purchase of 100 Lock Drive for a West Side Fire Station. Action on this was postponed until the May 9th City Council meeting, and further that the solicitor provide written clarification regarding the ambiguity of the order and suggested wording to resolve the ambiguity at the May 9th, 2022 City Council meeting.
Councilor Roby.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to postpone this until the May 23rd City Council meeting.
Motion is made and seconded to postpone the vote on the letter till May 23rd. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? It is postponed to May 23rd, 9-0. Agenda item number 20.
Order number 2122-100, 8402B4, mayoral veto relative to the transfer request in the amount of $5,092,666.66 for the acquisition of 100 Lock Drive for a new fire station. An action was postponed until the May 9th City Council meeting, and further that solicitor provide written clarification regarding the ambiguity of the order and suggested wording to resolve the ambiguity at the May 9th City Council meeting.
Councilor Roby.
Thank you. Move to postpone this until May 23rd.
Motion made and seconded to postpone the vote till May 23rd. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? It is postponed until May 23rd, 9-0.
Go for it.
Councilor Navin.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion made and seconded to adjourn. All those in favor? Opposed? 2 hands, good. Opposed? Carries 9-0. We are adjourned at 10:30.